In Arcane, a lot of discussion and analysis centers around the bigger pictures, the plots, the concepts, and the great political games the, for example, Medardas, Feroses, Silcos, Wardens, Firelights, Noxians are playing about. And all those are interesting. And especially to me, I love a good political world building in a show or fantasy setting. But another thing I love is seeing the individual characters' experiences and arcs. A well-written story has both grand designs and yet small, fascinating details. More personal aspects of the story rather than the larger plot and roles at play. And the story between Jayce and Viktor is one such beautiful dynamic arc. How so very similar scientists and scholars with very like-minded aspirations and backgrounds drawn to each other, and yet the small differences in their lives nudge them apart into very different paths and conclusions. So, fellow minds, I present to you the future I foresee for Jayce and Viktor in Arcane Season 2 and beyond. So be in comfort as we explore my thoughts on how these fundamentally similar scholars of progress will attain drastically differing outcomes, here in Mine Mind. In order to predict the future, we must first understand what already came to pass. But in truth, we already do know the future of these two. In the current main lore of League of Legends, this is what Jayce and Viktor have become. And so Arcane Season 2 will be more of an intermediary from their origin stories in Season 1 to their seeming destinies after Season 2. So let's begin with what we know in Season 1. What drives these two characters to do what they do in the first place? Jayce and Viktor are actually more similar than different. Both actually came from meager origins, having to work their way up into influence and recognition of their talents.
Poor cripple from the Undercity? I was an outsider the moment I stepped foot in Piltover.
Remind me.
They're toolmakers. I believe they came to renown for their design of the collapsible pocket wrench.
Both are true scholars of invention, innovation, and science which drives progress, and those are what shape their vision of progress itself. They both want to create tools that will help people progress themselves, just as they did. Both are eager to bring their shared envisioned change as seen with their projects in Hextech and their presentation to Heimerdinger of such, even as he rejects their desire for immediate public access to their work. Again, very similar motivations, very similar personalities, however their dynamic is also one of tension.
They're dangerous! I'm from the Undercity. You're right. I'm sorry.
As Jayce is from a house, a lower form of nobility in Piltover, and Viktor is simply from the Undercity. Even though they have very similar motivations, aspirations, and indeed personalities towards progress, certain circumstances just were different for them. Jayce became a counselor in part due to his coming from a house, something Viktor was never in a disposition to become or have the position of in the first place. Thus, as we saw, shaping Jayce's views a bit differently, interjecting it with politics and trade relations. While Viktor had incurred illness and disabilities from his growing up in the Undercity, shaping his capabilities as a scientist and the focus of his work to be more susceptible to desperation and literal pain, together with all the psychological drawbacks of such a position. This, as we saw, led to some tension between them, as these small differences in their lives grew the differences in their perceptions and actions. But they are still largely the same. That is why they still see eye to eye most of the time and are amicable to discuss with one another towards their shared goal of helping people. But given their differences, one is simply much more tied to Piltover and one to what will become Zaun. You know, as of writing this, I realized their story is really similar, if not foreshadowing the situation and the history between Piltover and the Undercity, which will become Zaun. Originally and fundamentally the same city, but through the little differences, they grow apart. And as Piltover rises in prestige and renown, like Jayce will rise in his own political and scientific careers, the Undercity shall transform into Zaun, like Viktor, shall transform from a cripple to lead his glorious revolution. But how will this come to be? Well, given what we know, here is how I see it unfolding in Season 2. I'm going to tie in some of my other speculations and theories on Arcane Season 2, so watch those before or even after this video to get a better picture of my theory analysis. Alright, so I established in my previous video, Mel, Jayce, and Viktor will survive via Mel's Solari magic-infused armor. Link to all my previous theories are below, or click the eye icon above. And via the German trailer, we know that half of the council is alive, so coupled with the Mel Solari shield theory, this illustration right here will show the most likely way this will come about. Mel's shield will activate, saving her and each of the counselors adjacent to her, Jayce and that other counselor guy. Now, I speculate that they won't escape this blast unscathed, however, I do suspect most of all, Viktor will be injured severely. This is already a very clear sign towards his eventual transformation into a cyborg, but on Jayce's side, this assault will clearly uproot any possibility of peace, as already hinted in the teaser trailer, with all sides getting ready to go to war. Especially with Viktor being severely injured and Caitlyn's mother getting killed, Jayce will probably no longer be amicable to any proposition of peace from the Undercity. And thus, the war will resume, and obviously Jayce, with the support of Ambessa Medarda, a commission from Caitlyn Kiraman and the Enforcers, and my speculated partnership from House Pharos will produce more Hextech weapons. And at the end of this war, it is indeed likely the case that Piltover will win, however give the Undercity some level of sovereignty, becoming the nation of Zaun. For their efforts in Hextech weaponry, which will be seen and viewed by the public as the thing that gave Piltover the winning edge, Jayce Talis, Clan Medarda, and House Pharos shall be rewarded greatly. And specifically, this will lead into both the Medarda and Pharos families being the two richest families in Piltover, just like in the original lore. Also, Jayce, as the inventor of Hextech, shall be able to create various factories all owned by him, as seen in the Legends of Runeterra game, as he largely produces and manufactures Hextech tools for clans Medarda and Pharos, also hinted in the cards of Legends of Runeterra. Furthering Hextech innovations and technology, a true servant of progress. However, even as things go well for Jayce, as he further ties himself with the noble families and politics and economics of Piltover, this and the very same war he fought, in part, for Viktor is also what will further separate them. Perhaps Viktor, seeing the catastrophic result of Piltover's victory on the Undercity, all the while Jayce and his allies revel and are awarded for their triumph, and due to his injuries will have a great resentment for Jayce. I foresee them arguing about the outcome of the war, and finally, Viktor retreats into the Undercity, crippled further, and there, filled with rage, obsession, and fervor due to his motivations and the betrayal he felt from Jayce, will develop his new cyborg body. If Viktor still uses Shimmer in this, it will probably be a great factor into his animosity against Piltover and Jayce definitely. In this twisted and crazed state caused by Shimmer, his injuries, and his animosity growing towards Jayce and Piltover, his ideals and motivations will be twisted. His once noble desires to bring good healthcare and aid to the ailments of the Undercity folk will develop into his vision of a glorious evolution of cybernetic enhanced humanoids. And with his desire for vengeance, shall he lead them into another rebellion against Piltover and its ruling class. And perhaps once again the entities involved in the previous war shall once again meet in the battlefield of the next one, especially Jayce and Viktor. Jayce and Viktor really are a mirror of one another. Just like the reflections, they are largely the same, but ultimately opposite. Though both indeed suffered and struggled in their childhood, the opportunities and environments they had dispositioned them ever so slightly to eventually take different paths. Jayce, through his family earning a status as lesser nobility in Piltover, together with his determination to create progress through innovations that can help people, was always destined to serve alongside the great clans of Piltovan society. Meanwhile, Viktor, though with similar fervor and almost the exact same desire as Jayce to create progress with science to serve the masses, due to his pain and ailments from being born in the Undercity, was always seeded within him the likelihood that he would be tied to the fate of Zaun and be its embodiment, the same way Jayce is for Piltover. In truth, this story isn't represented through Vi, Jinx, Vander, Silco, Caitlyn, Heimerdinger, or even anyone else, for this story is about Piltover, the city of progress, and its twin, the Undercity of Zaun, which are, as I've shown clearly, embodied by and through their story, Jayce and Viktor. Now, there are a lot of lessons in this story, commentaries on society and how poverty and access to opportunities can drastically change otherwise very similar people, and how those can be exacerbated by war. But those can be for another video I plan to make on the lessons of governance we can learn from Arcane, so stay tuned for that. For now, these are how I think the Jayce and Viktor storylines will come about in Arcane Season 2, and how they will eventually tie into the current lore. What about you, fellow minds? What are your own thoughts on the matter? Do share them freely below. Naturally, like and subscribe to support the channel to support this mind. And may we meet again soon, fellow minds. You are all always welcome here in my mind.